Hey, what's up, guys? Riff here. So today we're going to be once again talking about the Superman movie since it's going to release this week. Now, this is a movie with a very iconic IP, one that's going to have a lot of hype surrounding its release, and one that's probably going to make a lot of money at the box office. However, that might be limited thanks to a last-minute media campaign, I guess you could call it, by director James Gunn, who has gone out of his way to make many controversial statements at the last second before this movie comes out, including some headlines we'll go over where he makes quotes basically saying this movie is going to be political, there's going to be political aspects to it, and these politics will represent real-life counterparts. And also, if people don't like that, well, they're jerks, and he basically wants them to go away. Yeah, not a great thing to do right before a movie like this is releasing. But before we get into the actual details surrounding Superman, I want to give a quick follow-up to yesterday's video. So we talked about the very tragic situation going on in Texas where there were serious floods, and based on the most recent updates, over 80 bodies have been recovered, including over 24 children. And I talked about this yesterday mostly because many social media users, including content creators, were making disgusting comments about this and even celebrating the deaths of these children for what I can only imagine are completely deplorable reasons. Now, one of the people who were fighting back against these disgusting comments from other content creators was Donut Operator, who was also quite literally down there helping with the rescue efforts. And late last night, he shared a host of various charity sources you can donate to. And here's one, for example, that I'm going to promote in this video if you guys are inclined to donate. It is the Community Foundation. This is a reputable charity that was recommended by the local governments who are impacted by this. And you can see right here's the page. You can donate. There's no pressure to do this, but I know a lot of people are interested in something like this and finding a reputable charity for what's going on in Texas. So I'm going to give a link to Donut Operator's tweet as well as this actual page itself. Be sure to share them or contribute if you feel so inclined. But I just want to provide that to you guys today. So let's get back to Superman. Like I said, iconic IP is the golden ticket of content. Any Superman movie is destined for at least a moderate level of success, if not major success. And if you look at the various trailers, including the first official trailer for Superman, very well received, despite some controversial creative decisions with this film that were already discovered by the time this came out. But like I said, very well received. And despite that, oddly enough, the box office projections are decent. You can see like 90 million to 125 million in the US. And that is something that is a number that I think they're going to achieve. Let me make this clear right from the jump. I think this movie is going to make a lot of money. The problem is you have to ask yourself, will they be able to overcome a ridiculously inflated budget, as we'll talk about later in this video? And also, how much is James Gunn and his comments at the last minute going to impact the potential reach of this movie at the box office? Now, right now, the box office is doing well. It's been a tough year for a lot of different franchises, but looking at Jurassic World Rebirth, it's done really, really well. Its opening weekend has gotten over 300 million. It's smashed all projections, and it's doing well. And it's a movie I saw. It was solid. Okay, out of the 4 Jurassic World movies, I think it was the worst one, but it was solid, right? It was a good time at the movie theater. I mean, it's a very simple formula, just like Superman. It's CGI dinosaurs. How could it be bad? Just put the CGI dinosaurs out there, dangle in front of people, and just sit back and collect the box office revenue. That's pretty much all there is to it. But looking around right now, that number they achieved, right, in the opening weekend, over 300 million, already puts them in the top 10 for the entire year of 2025. That's how bad things have been. In fact, that opening weekend number smashed Snow White out of the water. Their entire theatrical run was beaten by over 50% in this opening weekend of Jurassic World Rebirth. Also, you had the F1 movie. People are saying that's really good. I haven't checked it out myself, but that one is right around the same, with a longer run, of course. But let's get right into what the big controversy is with Superman. So obviously, this is an iconic American superhero. It's a big part of his identity and everything to do with this franchise. And people were wondering from the jump, how is James Gunn going to treat anything involving that identity? And they've made it very clear they're tiptoeing around it from day one. Okay, James Gunn, as well as David Corenswet, the actor behind Superman, they have avoided using phrases like the American way, which was already raising eyebrows about a couple weeks ago when this first came out. And apparently in a recent interview, he was talking about this character and saying, and the reality is that what he doesn't have to be is Superman, when he doesn't have to be this calm, reassuring presence to the public, when he doesn't have to symbolize safety and security and truth and justice and all those good things. He still feels those values, which a lot of this stuff already doesn't sound like the Superman people have been used to for decades now. But we get a new trilogy in terms of the phrases he's using. It's no longer truth, justice, and the American way. It's now truth, justice, and good things. Whatever that means. It's actually a pretty loaded thing if you're saying, well, we're replacing the American way with good things. But yeah, this tiptoeing around the American identity of Superman was already raising some eyebrows. And then you have this, reported by Variety here. James Gunn says Superman is about an immigrant that came from other places and how we've lost the value of basic human kindness. Yes, it's about politics. Seems like a really good decision to do right before this movie is set to release. I mean, like literally in the last seconds, he is now making it clear this is about politics and it's trying to mirror some realities of modern politics in the modern landscape of our society. Yeah, that's probably not going to go over too well with a lot of people, or at least it's going to feel very divisive. And we're talking about this immigrant kind of angle here. We'll see some of the comments here. So he said this, the story of America, and at a basic level, is about a man searching for a better life away from his original home. I mean, Superman is the story of America, an immigrant that came from other places and populated the country. But for me, it's mostly a story that says basic human kindness is a value and something we have lost. Now, I've seen this phrase, basic human kindness, used a lot by some of the most insufferable and, quite frankly, deranged people on the internet. So I'm a little hesitant with this phrase being used so flippantly, but he's trying to make it an immigrant story. As we'll see, kind of reflecting upon current tensions in the United States. And we look at Superman as a character, an alien that's shot down as an infant, as a baby, and then raised by farmers out in rural America, and then being integrated into American society, and then doing good deeds for America. And now we're trying to basically reflect that on current things going on. You can see where people are getting a little bit tired of the comparison, kind of rolling their eyes at it. But continuing on, Gunn acknowledged that the movie's themes may be interpreted differently across political groups, especially considering the current nationwide unrest around immigration. However, Gunn stands by the ideals embedded in Superman and added that he doesn't care if anyone takes offense. Continuing, yes, it plays differently, but it's about human kindness, and obviously there will be jerks out there who are just not kind and will take it as offensive just because it's about kindness, but screw them. He continued, yes, it's about politics, but on another level, it's about morality. Do you never kill no matter what, which is what Superman believes, or do you have some balance as Lois believes? Oh, this sounds like such a great centerpiece of this movie, but yeah, you can see. He's making it very clear. This is about politics. It's going to be a political movie. And on top of that, if you don't like it, if this offends you or bothers you in any sort of a way, you're a jerk, and he's saying screw you. Again, right before the movie's coming out. This is a cash grab. And he's doing everything in his power to wane that in ways that are just not necessary. He would have been better off just letting this come out into theaters and present itself for what it is. But he's getting ahead here and getting on a moral high horse and talking about all these things about human kindness and how this is going to make basically the jerks angry. But there's another angle here where he's been getting very defensive about the projections of this movie in the box office and what expectations have been made for this movie to break even, where he says it's nonsense to think Superman will flop, and if it doesn't make 700 million, it doesn't need to be as big as people are saying. So there's some numbers people are throwing out there for it to break even, and he's not too happy about it. And we can see right here, it's set to launch this week, and he's saying, is there something riding on the question? And he says, yeah, but it's not as big as people make it out to be. They hear these numbers that the movie is only going to be successful and make 700 million or something like that, and it's just complete and utter nonsense. It doesn't need to be as big of a situation as people are saying. Well, I don't know. If this movie doesn't make 700 million, I think that's a really bad sign, because the budget for this film is estimated to be astronomical. Like one of the biggest budgets for a superhero movie we have ever seen. In fact, there are some reports that the gross budget of this film was nearly $400 million. And this was a figure submitted in order to secure tax incentives, which will get down that cost by, it's projected, about $100 million. But still, right off the bat with a gross budget of nearly $400 million, and people in the industry are predicting that the marketing for this might be over $200 million. And some estimates are getting as high as $700 million to break even. $700 million to $900 million just to break even. That is the absolute state of the movie industry right now, especially with superhero movies. You have to spend hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars and make nearly $1 billion just to break even. Something's got to give at this point. These numbers are absolutely insane. Now, there was another twist in the PR campaign here. Yeah, wubba lubba dub dub. We got Rick and Morty, guys. So James Gunn and Zack Snyder, who many people try to pit against each other, and their fandoms are pitted against each other, they played themselves on the latest episode of Rick and Morty. And they're being pretty silly about many different things. And basically the plots of this episode was that Rick was angry, and Rick and Morty as well were angry about a franchise that James Gunn was working on, and Rick and Morty go out there and make something that ends up, in James Gunn's eyes, being better than what he created. And this was his reaction. This is the only thing I want to play, otherwise I'm risking probably copyright anyways. But this line is just oof.
They did it! What an ending! They outdone the Gun!
They outgun the Gun. Now, I think his voice acting skills are actually pretty decent, by the way. I will point that out. I will give that to James Gunn. But yeah, that is the Rick and Morty action here, the Rick and Morty connection, where James Gunn says dream job, playing a villain on hashtag Rick and Morty. I don't know if this is really like something you should be saying, like the dream job was to play a villain on Rick and Morty when your Superman film is coming out this week. I think that dream job should have been Superman. Like the priorities seem a little messed up here, but anyways, there's just a lot going on with this film. And like I said earlier, and I'll say it a million times, I believe this film is going to sell a lot at the box office. I think it's going to do really well as a gross number, but the issue is, will it overcome this massively bloated budget? They've been trying, James Gunn included, to reduce the perception of what the budget is, but they can't really get over that for too long. Eventually, you're going to know whether or not this was a financial success for DC. And at this point, they have to overcome the massive budget as well as these last-minute comments by James Gunn that is just making things more controversial, but not in a way that's bringing any sort of renewed interest in this film as it's releasing. I just think it's causing more division. I don't think this is going to destroy the movie. Like, it's not going to bomb now because of the things he's been saying, but why not capitalize on this as much as you can? Why would you come out and say these controversial things right at the last second and start creating a narrative that this film is political, it's divisive, and people are going to get mad about it? If they do, they're jerks, and that the director is saying screw you to those people. How is that productive in any sort of a way? I just don't know. It seems to happen with a lot of films these days. But anyways, that's going to do it for this video. As always, feel free to share your thoughts about today's topics in the comment section down below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.